Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the program. We're now at the halfway point of our show, which leads us to our next discussion. And in this segment, we'll be discussing a form of inflammatory arthritis. You may have heard of it. It's called gout. I'm going to ask my colleague here, what do you know about gout? What have you heard? What do you know about it?
Well, I know that right now my mom is facing somewhat, she is 63 years old, my mom, and then she's having this arthritis. So I know how it's very difficult for her to like walk.
Okay, so it's
like bones,
pain.
right.
Yeah, okay. So I know it's got something to do with elevated levels of uric acid, but outside of that, I know it's also very complicated when it comes to your dietary needs and things of that sort. And what we do know for sure is that gout usually occurs in adults all the way to elders, just like you mentioned. But nowadays, we're also seeing young people suffering from gout.
And that's very scary. Now, several factors such as poor eating habit might also affect this condition, like you just stated. And to explain more on the cause of gout among young generation, we have here with us in the studio, pediatrician from Hermina Jatinegara Hospital, Dr. Wardhana. Good morning, doctor. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes, good morning,
So,
Paul and Caroline.
Actually, Paul was already just a little bit explaining about gout, but can you elaborate more of those, especially that doesn't really necessarily know more about gout?
Okay. Gout is inflammatory conditions that attributable to the deposits of monosodium urate is from hyperuricemia in our body. And what is hyperuricemia? Hyperuricemia means the conditions that our uric levels in our body above the normal limits. It's defined above 7 milligram per deciliters.
Okay.
And
is that the same for men and women?
it's quite different, but men around 3, the normal level until 3 until 7 milligram per deciliters, and for the women around 2.5 until 6 milligram per deciliters.
It's a lower threshold for
yes.
women. Okay.
But in children, it's also relatively rare. Yes.
Right.
And from the prevalence, the gout in children is just around the prevalence in some studies in Japan shows that the data, the gout is around 0.007% in studies in Japan.
It's very small numbers.
It's small numbers. And most of the children affected gout or the conditions of hyperuricemia has the underlying disease or comorbidities, and not like as in adult patients, the children have the comorbidities.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about, so correct me if I'm wrong as well anywhere along the way, because I've recently started studying about gout. So gout is caused if you have, your uric acid levels are too high. And a lot of that is caused by dietary, like from what you eat. That's why it happens as you get later on in life, because you continue to eat the same things that may not be good for you. So before we analyze why this is happening in younger generation, why does it happen in general? I mean, the food we eat, is there any other reasons why this is happening? And what kind of foods are we eating that is causing these elevated levels?
Okay, let
Asam
me...
urat, right? We call it.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yes. Let me explain about the what is hyperuricemia.
Okay.
And hyperuricemia is the high level of uric acids, as I explained before. What is uric acid? It's our body contains of components like purines.
Okay.
It's present normally in our body, in our muscles, and also we also eat the exogenous purines from the foods that we are consuming daily. And if we consume the foods containing high purines like meat, liver, seafoods, seashells, or some vegetables like spinach, mushrooms, asparagus, and also cauliflowers. It contains from a high amount of purines, and also the sweet beverage or soda.
Right.
Because the high fructose will metabolize into the uric acid. Normally, the uric acid will excrete in our urinations.
Right.
In some conditions, it will retain in our body.
Right. Is coffee amongst them? Because actually one of our colleagues was just mentioning this, right? I'm not drinking coffee for a couple of weeks now because of uric acid.
Actually, the coffee is not, from some studies, the coffee is not cause to
Right.
uric
Okay.
acids. And it's the difference between adult and children, right?
Children,
And the
yes.
children have as I explained before, the children have the comorbidities and
Right.
See, something that is making their bodies not getting rid of these purines into their urine,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Something that is making them retain all of this, which is
Yes.
causing.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a data right here. You just mentioned it, Doctor. Gout has affected over 696,000 young people aged between newborn until 18 in Japan. Of this figure, 48 people, or around 0.007%, as you mentioned, were children. A study also stated that gout can occur at birth. So is this genetic heredity that causes this, especially newborn? Because basically they're just, born.
pass it
They
down.
just birth.
Okay, this is the studies from Japan conducted in 2016 and until 2017, and from the 276 patients in 6,096 patients, children patients, there are gout patients and asymptomatic hyperuricemia. And in 276, just there are 48 patients
Yes.
with the gout.
Yes.
And the conditions, the condition is there are acute condition and also chronic conditions. The acute conditions like gastroenteritis with the dehydrations,
Okay.
or asthma attack with the hypoxia. It is transient. If the dehydration is corrected, the
It'll
uric
go
level
away.
is normal. And the chronic conditions like metabolic disease. Metabolic disease including Lesnihan syndrome. It is genetics and also the glycogen storage disease.
Okay.
It is genetic disorders, or some conditions like Down syndromes in children.
Right.
Some studies have the associated with the high hyperuricemia.
Is that right?
Yes, and also the other disease like malignancy, like leukemia or lymphoma or hemolytic anemia. It also associated with hyperuricemia. And also it is important that obesity is also associated with hyperuricemia also, and hyperuricemia will lead to the deposit the uric acids in the soft tissue, and which cause gout.
Okay, so let's wind it back a little bit. Let's have a look at the images behind you. We're giving some examples. Gout is the pain that people feel, right?
Yes.
From these elevated levels of uric acid. We see it a lot in the lower extremities. A lot of people complain like it's usually in the foot or the big toe.
Yes, yes.
So first of all, could you explain some of these are signs that people should look out for, right? If you have experienced pain and it's a certain kind of pain in certain body parts, then you might want to get yourself checked for gout. So what are, along with what we're seeing back here, what are some of the most common examples of the pain that we feel?
Okay.
And where? Yeah, where?
The symptoms if gout is the deposits of uric acid in the soft tissue. Is the common is in the joints, in our finger,
Right.
toes.
Also, it can be upper body as well.
Yes, yes, and the joints.
Okay.
So the uric acid will deposits in the joints, and the symptoms are swelling
Okay.
Yes.
and redness,
Yeah.
and also stiff, warmth, and also severe pain actually.
So it's a sharp pain or a dull pain?
Can be sharp on.
Oh, really? Okay,
So it's different.
It's yes, range from the just moderate pain to the severe pain.
Okay, I have a follow-up question to this because you mentioned something about asymptomatic. I have a friend, our colleague, his wife actually has much more higher levels of uric acid, but she doesn't have gout. So her uric acid levels was above 10. I think it was 11 or 12, something like that. But she doesn't get gout, whereas his levels are lower, but he can already feel it. So he knows when it's coming on, and he'll get himself checked and lower it. So I guess my question is, can that happen, and is that something that is either safer or more dangerous? Because if you don't get gout, if you don't feel any pain, but is that actually more dangerous because you don't know how high your uric acid levels are?
Actually, we should be also careful about the uric levels.
Okay.
If we already check from maybe medical check up and our uric levels above 7, So we have to be careful because in some patients it will be have the symptoms appears,
Okay.
and we also, if the symptoms persistent appear, so we have to careful because what is underlying disease in our body, or do we have any comorbidities like kidney disease or the
Right.
other disease? So it's also
Could be a sign of
Yeah.
something else.
yes, because since I explained before that the uric acid will excrete in the urine, and if we have the some disease like kidney disease, so the uric level cannot excrete to the urine. So we have to be careful about the underlying disease also.
Okay.
So, Dr. Wardhana, my question goes back to the children. Hence, if it is still very small numbers, it's still very rare.
Yes.
But when it does happen, let's say a parent that has a child that has the symptoms of gout, how can we first prevent it, and can it be curable also for those children that already is infected with gout?
Okay. Actually, if we have the patients or we have the children with the gouts, so we have to go to the pediatricians, and so we should diagnose what is the underlying conditions.
Cause.
Okay.
And then how we manage should be treat comprehensively. And what the underlying disease, whether is there any cardiovascular disease or kidney disease, it should be treated comprehensively. And from the lifestyle changes should be modified also.
Yeah.
Since I talked before that obesity is also a major risk factor,
Right.
so should be
Right.
modified the diets,
Nutrition-wise, yeah.
nutrition, and also the physical activity.
Right.
And so we have to also avoid or limit the
Yeah.
food that contains high purines, like I said before, like meat or liver. Just not avoid, but we should
down.
limit, and because in children also we need protein also
Of
to growth and development. So
Yes.
should be careful management, and should be by the doctor pediatricians.
Okay.
So the nutritionists can be adequate for the growth and development, and also we can manage the gout.
Okay.
And also we have to limit the soda, and
Yes.
also the
Always.
sweet beverage,
yes,
beverage,
yes.
and also for the children, since it's rare, so we have to underlying disease should be treated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be another reason
Yeah.
this is happening, right?
Yes.
But can they grow normally though? Let's say we did all these preventions and whatnot, but they can grow.
Yes, if we already the children is already treat comprehensively,
Yes.
the growth and development will be go in a normal condition.
Okay, should be no
that's great.
long-term
Yes, it's-
affecting them.
But sometimes parents is in denial, right? Like, it's very hard for us to understand that our children, let's say, especially
Yes.
these kind of infections or diseases, we think that, no, my kids won't have it because nobody else has it and whatnot.
Sure.
So sometimes as parents, we do need to understand and be transparent as we can be.
Right, and I've recently done some research on this. Some of the food that you think, oh, well, I'll just eat healthy. Well, healthy is all relative, right? For gout, something
Yeah.
like gout, even vegetables can affect you. So please
Right.
do your research in regards to what Diana
So
said.
you were, sorry you were mentioning vegetables. What color group of vegetables you should avoid for gout? Is it more the greens?
There you go, Doc. It's
or-
not really by color, is it?
Oh,
There's
is
just
it?
certain vegetables in particular.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Like
All
asparagus,
right.
that one I know for
Yeah.
sure. Mushrooms.
Spinach.
Yeah.
Yes, spinach is a big
Yeah,
one.
because I was thinking spinach, asparagus, all like green, green, green.
And
then
very
it's
healthy too, you would think, right? Yeah,
right,
there you
because
go.
it has a lot of zinc and whatnot
Indeed.
usually.
Like cauliflower also.
Yes, absolutely. That one's white. Anyway, Doc, thank you so much for this more in-depth look on something that is very rare, but we do need to be more
Yes,
aware
thank
of this.
you.
Do
Oh, and
appreciate
thank you, Caroline.
Thank you very much,
And it's
Dr.
also a
Wardhana.
responsibility for the pediatricians to educate the
Indeed.
Agree. Parents everywhere.
parents.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was our discussion in regards to gout for those that are very young age with Dr. Wardhana. We're going to take a short break here, but when we return, Shanaz will be back to share with you the latest news from Southeast Asia. Stay tuned.